There's a moment that unsettles people more than they admit. You walk into your room, turn on the light, and suddenly you see it. A cockroach, then another, days later, then again. And slowly, a question starts forming in your mind. Why does this keep happening? I remember this clearly, not because it was mysterious, but because people made it mysterious. There was a time I was deeply involved in environments where everything was given a hidden meaning. Every small event, every coincidence, every pattern was interpreted as something deeper. And one thing I saw again and again was this: people were trained to assign fear to normal things. Now listen carefully. When people start seeing cockroaches repeatedly, their mind doesn't stay neutral. It starts searching for meaning. Is this a sign? Is something wrong? Why does this keep appearing? And the more they think about it, the more intense it feels. But here's the truth most people never hear clearly. Not everything that repeats has a hidden message. Some things repeat because conditions allow them to repeat. I saw this again and again. People ignored the physical cause and focused only on imagined meanings. And because of that, the problem stayed. Now imagine this. You see one cockroach, instead of asking, "What does this mean?" you ask a different question. What is allowing this? That shift changes everything. Now listen carefully. Cockroaches don't appear randomly. They follow patterns. They respond to environment. They are drawn to specific conditions: food, moisture, darkness, open entry points. And if those conditions exist, they return not once, but repeatedly. Now here's the deeper truth. Your mind works the same way. Whatever you allow consistently returns consistently. That's the real pattern, not something hidden, but something unnoticed. Now imagine this. Instead of fearing what you see, you understand it, you identify it, you change the condition. That's where control begins. Now listen carefully. In this message, I'm going to show you what's really happening when you keep seeing cockroaches, why most people misinterpret it, and how to stop the pattern completely, not by guessing, but by understanding. Now, this is where everything becomes clear. Because once you remove the fear, you can finally see the pattern. I remember this clearly. People kept asking why it keeps happening, but they were asking the wrong question. They were asking for meaning instead of looking at cause. Now listen carefully. Cockroaches don't choose a place randomly. They respond to very specific conditions. And if those conditions exist, they stay. If they stay, they multiply. And once they multiply, it starts feeling like a constant problem. Now imagine this: a small crumb left overnight, a slightly damp corner, a dark space that never gets disturbed, a tiny crack under a door or behind a cabinet. Individually, these things feel small, but together they create the perfect environment. Now, here's the truth you need to understand: repetition is never random, it is always supported by something. I saw this again and again. People cleaned what was visible, but ignored what was consistent. They removed one problem, but left the condition unchanged. And because of that, the same issue returned. Now listen carefully. Cockroaches are drawn to four main things: food sources, moisture, shelter, entry points. If even one of these is present consistently, you will see them again. Now imagine this: you remove the cockroach, but leave the food source, or you clean the surface, but ignore the hidden moisture, or you seal one area, but leave another open. What happens? It comes back, not because something is targeting you, but because something is still allowing it. Now, here's something very important. Most people focus on removing the result instead of fixing the cause. And when you only remove the result, you create temporary relief, not permanent change. I saw this clearly. People would react each time they saw one, but they never stopped the pattern itself. Now listen carefully. This is where control begins. You stop reacting and start identifying. You stop guessing and start observing. Now imagine this. You check where food is left exposed. You notice areas that stay damp. You identify dark, undisturbed spaces. You look for small openings where they enter. That awareness changes everything. Now here's the truth. Once the condition is removed, the repetition stops. Not slowly, but naturally. Now listen carefully. This is the first real shift. You move from fear to understanding, because once you understand the cause, you don't feel confused anymore. You feel in control. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the mistake most people make after this. Why, even after cleaning, the problem still returns, and what they are missing without realizing it. Now, this is the part that frustrates most people because they do try to fix the problem. They clean, they spray, they remove what they can see. And for a short time, it looks like it worked. But then, a few days later, you see another one, and that's when confusion starts. I already cleaned. I already removed them. Why are they still coming back? I remember this clearly. This was the exact point where people lost control because they focused on effort, but not on precision. Now listen carefully. Cleaning is not the same as eliminating the source. That's where most people go wrong. Now imagine this. You clean your floor, you wipe surfaces, you remove visible dirt. Everything looks fine. But behind your fridge, there's still warmth and crumbs. Under your sink, there's still moisture. Inside a small crack in the wall, there's still shelter. You clean the surface, but not the system. Now here's the truth you need to understand. Cockroaches don't live where you look. They live where you don't look. I saw this again and again. People kept focusing on visible areas, while the real activity was happening in hidden spaces. And because of that, the pattern never truly stopped. Now listen carefully. Temporary cleaning removes visibility, but targeted action removes repetition. Now imagine this. Instead of cleaning everything randomly, you focus on key areas, behind appliances, inside cabinets, under sinks, around drains, near entry points. That's where the real issue is. Now here's something very important. Cockroaches don't need much to survive. A tiny amount of food, a small amount of water, a narrow space, that's enough. So even if your home looks clean, if those small conditions exist, they stay. Now listen carefully. This is why people feel like the problem is mysterious, because they don't see the source directly, but the source is always there. Now imagine this. You stop reacting to what you see and start targeting what you don't see. You seal cracks, you remove hidden moisture, you clean deep, not just wide, you eliminate access. That's when things change. Now here's the truth. Once you remove the hidden system, the visible problem disappears on its own. I saw this clearly. People who shifted from surface cleaning to deep correction stopped seeing the problem return, not temporarily, but consistently. Now listen carefully. This is the second shift. You move from surface action to root correction, and once you reach this level, you are no longer guessing, you are solving. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you something even more important, why your timing matters, and how certain habits during the day and night are quietly allowing the problem to continue. Now, this is where most people overlook the real problem because they focus on what they do, but ignore when they do it. I remember this clearly. This was the hidden factor that kept the cycle going even in clean homes. Everything looked fine during the day. But the real activity was happening at night. Now listen carefully. Cockroaches are nocturnal. They don't move when everything is active. They wait. They come out when it's quiet, dark, undisturbed. Now imagine this. During the day, your space looks clean. You don't see anything. You feel like the problem is gone. But at night, food crumbs are left out. Dishes sit in the sink. Moisture builds in certain areas. Lights are off. Movement stops. That's when activity begins. Now here's the truth you need to understand. What you leave overnight becomes their opportunity. I saw this again and again. People cleaned during the day, but ignored their night habits. And because of that, the pattern never stopped. Now listen carefully. Timing is not just about cleaning. It's about closing your environment properly. Now imagine this. Before you sleep, you remove all exposed food. You dry wet surfaces. You empty trash. You check dark corners. You reduce what attracts them. That one shift changes everything. Now here's something very important. Even small habits matter. A single plate left overnight, a damp sponge in the sink, a slightly open food container. That's enough. Now listen carefully. You don't need a major issue. You just need a consistent opportunity. And if that opportunity repeats every night, so will the problem. Now imagine this. You don't just clean randomly. You close your day intentionally. Nothing is left open. Nothing is left exposed. Nothing is left attracting. That creates a break in the cycle. Now, here's the truth. Consistency at night controls what happens in the dark. I saw this clearly. People who changed their night routine stopped seeing the problem return, not because they did something extreme, but because they removed the pattern. Now listen carefully. This is the third shift. You stop thinking in moments and start thinking in cycles. Because what happens daily repeats daily. And once you control the cycle, you control the result. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the next level, how even small openings and unnoticed access points allow the problem to continue no matter how clean or consistent you are. Now, this is the part most people completely miss, because even after cleaning, even after fixing habits, the problem still shows up, not as often, but enough to stay frustrating. I remember this clearly. This was the stage where people would say, I've done everything, so how are they still getting in? And the answer was always the same: access. Now listen carefully. Cockroaches don't just appear inside your space, they enter it. And if there is even a small opening, they will find it. Now imagine this: a tiny crack under your door, a gap around a pipe, a loose window edge, an opening behind cabinets, something so small. You don't even notice it, but for them, it's enough. Now here's the truth you need to understand. You can remove every condition inside, but if access remains open, the problem can restart. I saw this again and again. People focused only on the inside, but ignored how things were getting in. And because of that, they kept dealing with new activity. Now listen carefully. Access points are usually hidden, not obvious, not in plain sight. Now imagine this. You check areas most people ignore: under doors, around plumbing pipes, behind kitchen cabinets, near drains and vents, window edges and wall cracks. That's where the real openings are. Now here's something very important. Even one small gap can allow repeated entry. And once inside, if conditions are even slightly supportive, the cycle begins again. Now listen carefully. This is why some people feel like the problem never fully goes away, because they fix everything inside, but leave the door open outside. Now imagine this. You don't just clean, you seal. You don't just remove, you block. You don't just react, you prevent. That changes everything. Now, here's the truth: prevention is stronger than reaction, because once something cannot enter, it cannot repeat. I saw this clearly. People who sealed entry points properly stopped seeing new activity, not temporarily, but consistently. Now, listen carefully. This is the fourth shift. You move from cleaning your space to securing your space. And once your environment is both clean and sealed, the pattern has nowhere to continue. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you something even deeper: why your mindset still matters, and how overreacting or ignoring the problem can quietly bring the cycle back without you realizing it. Now, this is the part most people don't expect, because by now you've cleaned properly, you've fixed your habits, you've checked entry points. But there's still one thing left: your response. I remember this clearly. People either did one of two things: they overreacted or they ignored it completely, and both kept the problem alive. Now, listen carefully. When you overreact, you create panic. You see one cockroach, and suddenly it feels like everything is out of control. Your focus breaks, your actions become rushed. You start doing random things without direction. Now imagine this: you spray one area aggressively, but ignore the actual source. You clean in a hurry, but miss key places. You act fast, but not precisely. That reaction creates temporary action, not lasting results. Now, here's the other side: ignoring the problem. This is just as dangerous. You see one and tell yourself it's nothing. You delay action. You assume it will go away on its own. But while you ignore it, the conditions remain. And when conditions remain, the pattern continues. Now, listen carefully. Both extremes lead to the same result: repetition. Now, here's the truth you need to understand: control comes from balanced awareness, not fear, not neglect, but clear, steady action. I saw this again and again. People who stayed calm but consistent solved the problem completely. Now imagine this: you see one cockroach, you don't panic, you don't ignore it, you observe, you ask, what allowed this? You check the source, you correct it, you close the gap. That's control. Now, here's something very important: your mindset determines your consistency. If you panic, you lose structure. If you ignore, you lose timing. But if you stay aware, you maintain both. Now, listen carefully. This is the fifth shift. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. Because once your response is clear, your actions become effective. Now, imagine this: every time something appears, you handle it the same way: calm, focused, precise. That consistency breaks the cycle. Now, here's the truth: the problem is not just what you see, it's how you respond to what you see. And once your response becomes stable, everything else follows. And in the next chapter, I'm going to show you the final step: how to make sure this problem doesn't come back again, and how to maintain a clean, controlled environment long term without constant effort. Now, this is where everything becomes permanent, not because the world changes, but because your system becomes complete. I remember this clearly. This was the stage where people stopped saying, "I hope it doesn't come back," and started saying, "I know it won't." Not from confidence alone, but from structure. Now, listen carefully. By now, you understand the key pieces: conditions, hidden areas, timing, entry points, your response. But none of these work alone. They only work when they become a system. Now imagine this: you don't clean randomly anymore. You clean with awareness. You don't just react when you see something. You prevent before it appears. You don't wait for a problem. You maintain control. That's the shift. Now, here's the truth you need to understand: long-term results don't come from intense effort. They come from simple actions. repeated consistently. I saw this again and again. People who did extreme cleaning once still had the problem return, but people who followed a simple routine daily eliminated it completely. Now listen carefully. This is the system. You remove food sources daily. You keep moisture controlled. You check hidden areas regularly. You maintain sealed entry points. You close your environment every night. Nothing extreme, nothing complicated, but consistent. Now imagine this. Each day, small actions prevent big problems. Each night, closure removes opportunity. Each week, small checks maintain control. That cycle keeps everything stable. Now, here's something very important. You don't need to think about it constantly. Once it becomes routine, it becomes automatic. I saw this clearly. People who followed this system stop worrying about the problem because it was no longer something they dealt with. It was something they had already prevented. Now listen carefully. This is the final shift. You move from reacting to a problem to maintaining a standard. And once your standard is clear, nothing below it continues. Now imagine this. Your space stays clean, your environment stays controlled, your routine stays consistent. That creates peace, not temporary, but lasting. Now here's the truth. You don't eliminate the problem once. You remove the conditions that allow it to exist. And once those conditions are gone, the pattern cannot return the same way. That's how control becomes permanent. That's how repetition ends. And that's how something that once felt constant stops completely.